4th of July.
What'd y'all do today? Anything?
No, I napped twice.
That's a good day.
My dad had brought these Hot Wheels tracks over, and I never had those growing up. He brought them over and he left them here, and so my kids played with those a lot of the morning. I got up this morning, went running, and so by like breakfast, I was already just like really sleepy. So like they started playing with the Hot Wheels, and I was just like put a timer on my phone, and I just rolled over on the couch and took a nap. And I got woken up by my youngest tapping my shoulder, like, "Hey," and I was like, "Huh? Oh,
get up.
Sorry." And then I did another one after lunch, and that was like a longer one. That was good.
Nice.
Yeah, I figured I'll sleep while I can because now it's nighttime and there's fireworks.
Yep.
And it just sounds like people are assault rifling each other on my street. Yeah.
It's weirdly not as bad as normal yet.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm just assuming it's going to gradually build.
It's going to carry over until 1 a.m.
Yep, pretty much.
Well, Mobile made it legal this year.
Oh.
So now there's more people doing it.
It's been legal here for a while, so it's like you can't do anything about it.
See, in years past, that was always half of the frustration was you're not even supposed to be doing this. We're in the city limits. You can't do this.
Yep.
And no one gives a shit about that law except for me. Yep. And I guess the municipality picked up on it and they said, "Hey, let's just screw. This is a dumb law. let's get rid of it."
I think what happened here is something similar where it was like nobody was enforcing it.
Yeah.
So it felt weird to like continually get called about it. And
right.
Like, we don't want to go out and do anything. So it's just whatever.
We can't tell people we're not going to do anything about the law we're paid to enforce.
Exactly.
So I imagine it was a lot of cops and the firework lobby.
Yep, pretty much.
on Capitol Hill. Of course, a bunch of people bought them, and I have to shut up about it now. Except I won't. Right. I still maintain that if you're shooting fireworks in the city limits, I hate you. And again, and this is all a matter of perspective because every single person I know shoots fireworks, and they're all like fireworks. I just hate it. I've grown to hate it. It's one of those things that I didn't realize I had such a problem with until I had kids. And I was like, you know what? This is like dangerous and unnecessary and it's loud and it just sucks. And it becomes one of those things where you're like, you know what? This is very American because the only excuse, if I were to go to my neighbors right now and say, "Hey, could you stop with the fireworks? It's obnoxious." They'd be like, "But it's the 4th of July." It's like, okay, fine. So it's 4th of July. So we're celebrating our independence from Great Britain. Okay. So we're celebrating our independence and we're expressing our freedom and our independence by doing something super obnoxious that our neighbors hate.
Right.
That's very American.
Yes. Well, and to me, it's like, okay, it's legal, but it's still inconsiderate.
Yeah.
And so
smoking's legal.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But
cool.
It's very inconsiderate. And so when I grew up, it was, we did shoot fireworks off.
Yeah.
But it would be like, for 10 minutes, just enough to be like, "Oh, cool. Yay."
How much did these people spend? I'm hearing all these pops and I'm like, I'm listening to dollars being flushed out of a big stack of cash.
Dude, people spend like hundreds and hundreds of dollars on fireworks. And that is ridiculous to me.
Yeah, I couldn't shell out that kind of cash for presumably how much fireworks they've bought.
Because here's the thing, look, I think fireworks are cool, just like the next guy.
Sure.
But the problem is like there is a limit of how cool it is in comparison to how much money is being flushed down the drain on something superfluous that is very momentary.
It's not like you light a firework, it goes up in the sky, it blows up, and then what floats down on a parachute is like a delicious burger you can now eat.
Correct. Or something
that's
that
a
lasts.
Good idea. That's American.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Why haven't we done that? But yeah, it literally is like the most fleeting of momentary happiness that we're spending money on. And like, to me, it doesn't really make me happy. It just makes me go, oh, cool.
Yeah. Again.
And I'm like, I'm not paying money for cool. I could do that any day of the week just by searching on YouTube, like a video of a dude like doing parkour. Cool.
Yeah. Or these grimace videos.
Or the grimace videos. Funny.
Oh, these are great.
Oh, great, cool.
Yeah, the spending money on the quickly disappearing, fleeting happiness, also very American and human.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, this is one of my big things with like, I've said this before, and people think I'm crazy. That if science created a pill that you could take and you never have to eat again, I'd be first in line, man. Eating is the dumbest thing because it's like spend money on something that will fill you up for 4 hours,
right?
And it takes you a minute and a half to eat it.
Also,
and I'm like,
eventually it might give you cancer.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Also, it makes you fat, and I'm like, I don't want. Also, this is too many calories for you, and I'm like, I don't want any of this.
I hope you enjoyed that. Now you have to go run so that you don't become fat.
Exactly. Hey, didn't that taste good? It's really bad for you.
Now
and I'm like, oh gosh,
go work it off.
Right.
Oh, also, this is like the surcharge of this of the whole eating thing.
Yep.
Now you have to poop.
Right, exactly.
Which is a mixed bag at best. Pooping,
poop out your money is essentially what it is.
And you can't like take it back. Can't go like, okay, now let's save this poop in a bag, and I can give this to the guy at McDonald's and get the next thing.
I always equate it to like a video game. I equate it to like a video game where you it's essentially like. You're walking through the forest in this video game, and every so often your little health meter starts beeping, and you have to collect a thing to continue on your quest. That's exactly what eating is to me. Yeah. It's like I'm going and now I have to do this thing to continue on my quest. But if I just didn't have to do the thing, I'm just spending money to continue my quest. Yeah, and that's great, but the problem is, again, it's like fleeting happiness. Like the people who are like, I spent like $400 on this meal. I'm like, why? A Wendy's meal does the exact same thing. It's not healthy, but whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. And fireworks are like the epitome of that. It's spend money to maybe be happy for 0.7 seconds.
Yeah. Oh, and possibly if you're not careful, you blow your fingers off.
Right, exactly. It's a huge hazard. Yeah. Be careful if you have kids or dogs. Right. And also if you have neighbors, maybe think twice.
And that's the thing. It's so like I was reading this thing recently. There's some city and more cities are changing their actual like city fireworks show. They're doing drone shows. And the headless is from the Morning Brew, so it had some snarky like opening line. It was like more cities are figuring out that shoving pyrotechnics into the sky during the summer isn't really the best idea, especially with extended wildfire seasons, and it's just bad for the environment too. It's a complete waste and all that shit. Like so you talked about y'all shot fireworks, so we did it too. We would always be down at the beach for New Year's or 4th of July when we had a beach house. So there was like a rough period where we did, and I don't remember what we did for 4th of July before that. I don't think we shot off fireworks because it wasn't legal in the city limits. So I don't think we ever did it from our house. I don't have memories of using fireworks at my parents' house. It was always, in a Coke bottle on the beach. And so for me, it was like, there's zero chance of a fire happening because we're on a beach.
On the beach.
And we're way away from the dunes and the sea oats and everything. And so the only thing that you'd sort of go like, is, the next day you go out there and there's just sticks. There's just, plastic everywhere and wooden sticks and peeled off wrapping. And like when you go swim in the ocean and you're like, there's a bunch of them.
Yep. They're
like on the shore. You try to skimboard and it's just like, it's covered in wood.
Yeah.
And so it's just, but like, so the drone shows the thing was like the average cost of whatever, a fireworks show in a city is like $7,000, and a drone show conversely is like $20,000. So it's not cost effective, but it's more eco-friendly. There's no noise pollution or pollution.
Yeah.
So they were like noise pollution, especially for like dogs and veterans who like are. If I were a veteran, I would like chain myself inside a sleeping bag tonight and and take a bunch of Ambien. Like hopefully I just drink some NyQuil.
Sleep in the basement. Yeah,
right,
exactly.
Like, that's it. I'm locking myself down before I hurt myself or somebody else.
Yep.
I also said drone shows they're just better at telling a story. And so it's a lot better of a spectacle.
Those drone shows are awesome. If you ever look at it, like watch YouTube videos of them, they're great.
They did it for the Super Bowl. It was, and they have been doing it. Like they're amazing.
They're awesome.
Like anyone who watched like Spider-Man Far From Home was like, I don't think drones can organize like that. It's like, I've seen it.
Maybe not quite like
they
that.
They can't project, realistic monsters.
Sure.
But you can absolutely have hundreds of them flown and synchronized to create an overall spectacle. Yes.
It's not far off for sure.
Yeah. So, so we're recording this on the 4th of July. And this is actually going to come out next week. And so if you're listening, hope you did have a happy 4th. And so my complaining had zero impact on your holiday because that was last week. So
we just ran off all of our audience because they all shot off fireworks.
they're like,
look at these guys.
Whatever.
Look at these wet blankets over here.
Yeah, exactly.
What are y'all going to talk about? Movies?
Well, we're going to talk about a couple of pretty American franchises, actually. So,
yeah.
Okay. Well, let's start it off then, Dustin. Let's talk about Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
The Dial of Destiny.
I'm retiring.
Well, in that case, what are we drinking?
Same for the goddaughter.
Dad told me you found something on a train during the war. A dial that could change the course of history.
Why are you chasing the thing that drove your father crazy? Don't move.
We need to get out of here. Stop! Sorry.
Helena! Dr. Jones, get him. Hitler made mistakes, and with this, I will correct them all. You stole it. Then you stole it.
And then I stole it. It's called capitalism.
This way!
Fasten your seatbelt. There might be some turbulence.
You've taken your chances, made your mistakes, and now a final triumph.
Give him hell, Indiana Jones! A few times in my life, I've seen things. I've been tortured with voodoo. Been shot 9 times, including once by your father. Sorry! But I've been looking for this all my life.
Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is a new release. It is currently in theaters. Didn't do so hot at the box office. Like it did okay, but didn't do so hot.
Yeah.
In fact, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull opened its weekend with like 100 million back in 2008, and this one opened its weekend at what, 60? 65, something like that.
Let me see. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Let me look at the box office here. Opening weekend grossed 101 million and was number 1 at the box office.
Gotcha.
And it set opening weekend records and so
got it. And yes, it was 60 million for Dial of Destiny. So it underperformed for Disney.
What was the budget for Crystal Skull? That was let me see here.
I'm not sure.
The budget for Crystal Skull is reportedly 185 million.
Okay.
So this one is like 250, 300 million, it says.
Yeah. Yeah, especially by the time you calculate your marketing and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not a great ending to the franchise. But let's talk about financially. But let's talk about the movie itself. So I'm going to keep this spoiler free for now, and we may go into some spoilers a little bit later. But just general recommendations right here off the top. So I gave this 3 stars, and it took me a long time to settle on that number. Normally I get out of a theater and I'm like, okay, I kind of know where this falls. Yeah. And this one, it took me days to kind of suss out what I actually felt about this, because there's a lot of conflicting feelings about it. So first of all, this film is the first in the franchise not to be directed by Steven Spielberg. Instead, he is replaced by James Mangold, who does a serviceable job, but he is not Steven Spielberg. And this franchise is so tied to Steven's storytelling style and his sensibilities, his filmic language, that taking that out, I think, did hurt the film. And then, just by its nature, the film has to be a little different, though, because Harrison is, of course, 80 years old now. And so you have to just by its nature account for that. He can't be doing what he did in the 80s for this franchise. And so, there has to be some differences here. And the question is, how far do the differences get you in terms of your enjoyment of the film? And I think that varies from person to person. The plot of the film is Indiana Jones is still teaching, but this is his last year. He's retiring. And the film opens with a flashback with a digitally de-aged Harrison Ford fighting the Nazis during World War II. And during this period, he's on an adventure with Toby Jones, and they are after the spear that pierced the side of Christ. Because so are the Nazis. But what they do is they stumble upon something that's a little bit more powerful. It is Archimedes' dial. And so in stumbling on this, they encounter this Nazi leader played by Mads Mikkelsen, who is also after Archimedes' dial. And then the film jumps back to now. Indy is, like I said, retiring. He's going through the motions of life and not really feeling much. The film, I guess this isn't really a spoiler because it happens in scene 1. You find out that Indy and Marion are separated, or at least are separate in the process of divorce. Yeah. There are papers that he needs to sign that are on his table. And so he and Marion are splitting up, and he is retiring. And so he's just kind of like a shell of his former self until he is approached by Toby Jones' daughter, his goddaughter, and played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. This character named Helena is here to help, nudge him out the door to help her find Archimedes' dial, to finish her father's lifelong quest of finding the complete dial and using it. Legends say that completing the dial, it's in 2 pieces. Completing the dial and using it would allow one to travel through time, at least to some extent. And so that's where we get the Dial of Destiny. That's the general story. Of course, all sorts of hijinks ensue, as any Indiana Jones film would do, albeit with a little less physicality from its lead, and instead giving some of that more punchy stuff to Helena Shaw. And so that's where I think a lot of people start to either dig or hate this film, is on her kind of, I've heard it said she takes over the film. I don't think she does. The film is still Indiana Jones's film. Yeah. And there's a lot of people online who I think are very quick to, scream woke or scream, whatever politics about this film. I don't think that ever comes through for me in the film. For me, the film is just a lesser film because it can't recapture the energy of the original 3 because of Harrison's age, and also because I think it makes some big missteps with the character of Indiana Jones. And And I think if we were to think about this being the last film, which I think they've more or less implied this is going to be the final Indiana Jones film. I think if that's the case, I think the film ends the franchise on a more sour note than Crystal Skull did, and certainly than The Last Crusade did. So it kind of, to me, leaves a sour taste, regardless of how good the film is, because I know that the ending of the film, the ending of the franchise, kind of rubs me the wrong way. And so again, no matter how good the film is, you just kind of petered out there at the end. So for me, do I recommend it? It's hard to say. Like, my Letterboxd review was cool. Now I have 2 Indiana Jones films to ignore. So to that end, I would say, like, no, I don't recommend it, but I also kind of do, because it is an Indiana Jones film and there is fun to be had here. It just never lives up to even the highs of Crystal Skull. And so I need to go back and rewatch Crystal Skull to be able to tell you which one's actually a better film. But I remember being more positive about Crystal Skull coming out of the theater than I was this one coming out of the theater. So do I recommend it to the general audience who doesn't have a huge passion for Indiana Jones? No. Do I recommend it for any Indiana Jones fan that you know, or even just casual Indiana Jones viewer? Sure. Yeah. Why not? So again, it's a mixed bag, but I gave it 3 stars because for me, it's right in the middle of the road. And you know, on any day I could be coerced to teeter to the other side. So I could go 2 stars tomorrow and well, I won't go 4 stars, but I could go 3.5. I could go 3.5.
Sure.
So I, you know, whichever way the wind blows, I could be convinced of. But for me, middle of the road, 3 stars. It's fine. You know, whatever. Don't listen to the guys online that are screaming woke. Again, it doesn't apply. I don't think that applies here.
No.
Just because there's a female in a leading role who happens to do some more physical things that Indy should be doing doesn't mean the franchise is selling out and going woke.
Well, it's 1969 in the film.
Yeah, right.
And Indy is old.
Yes.
So there's things that wouldn't make sense for him to do.
Correct.
And that would make total sense for her to do.
Correct.
Okay.
So
what's the problem?
I mean, right. Well, I think a lot of people are just like, it's another Star Wars. We're taking our lead character and giving it to a young girl. And I'm like,
hey, you know why we're doing that? Because the film shouldn't exist.
Yeah. Hey, you know what else? That's not inherently a bad thing.
Right.
It's only a bad thing in execution.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just because the franchise is giving some screen time to a female,
right,
is not a bad thing unless it's a bad movie.
Right. Like if it would have been, if the Shia LaBeouf character from Crystal Skull had been a woman, sure, I wonder if people would have been saying the same thing. Like, why are we potentially passing the franchise to a woman? It's like,
yeah,
like if they just changed it from a son to a daughter, like,
yeah, I wonder that too, and I also wonder the same thing about like Rey with Star Wars. Mm-hmm. But I think there is a little bit of leeway given if it is a character who has a daughter, as opposed to this is just a new character we've never heard of, right? You know, and so that automatically I think just starts you like in the negative, and you have to build up from there. But if you just said like Indy has a daughter, I think more people would be more likely to be on board with this. Right. This is Indy's daughter.
It's his, yeah.
It's his.
And Marion's, I guess.
Sure. But I think that, you know, you would... I think it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like, all that matters is it a good character? Does she matter to the story? Does she do anything that propels the story forward in a meaningful way with agency while supporting, because she is a supporting character, our protagonist. And that's her job. That's any supporting character's job. And if she can do that, then I don't care what gender she is.
Right.
So I think that's the question, is did she do that? For me, she's kind of forgettable.
How's Harrison Ford in the film, though?
Okay, so Harrison's good, but he isn't great, and I think part of that though is the writing. So it's a valid question. The first 4 Indiana Jones movies feature an Indy who's capable of smiling, and this film features an Indy who's incapable of it. And I think part of that is that we're writing this character like he's gruff and grizzled and over everything. And part of that may be, I don't know, Harrison is that way, so let's write to that. But the problem with it is, it's not quite Indiana Jones. Indy, to me, is always this like smarmy swashbuckler, like with a grin, like a half smirk. You know what I mean? Like that's just like his constant thing is like a half smirk. Like, well, you know, here I am. I outsmarted you. And in this movie, he's a lot more like, well, I'm just here and I just want to go home. And like, okay, but that's not quite Indy. And
right.
But is that Harrison's fault? I don't really think so. I think the film positions Indy to be in that area. And so Harrison does a great job of bringing that to life, but it ain't Indy. And for me, it didn't feel like Indiana. Even in the digitally de-aged stuff, where there may be a little more playfulness,
right.
Still didn't quite feel like Indy. But I don't blame Harrison because I never blame Harrison.
Sure. No, I don't know. And I don't blame him for wanting to be involved and to make another film. Like, you know, that's, I'm sure that there's a big part of this. Like he's tearing up before the con film festival presentation stuff. And I have to imagine, I know it's a little bit morbid, but like I have to imagine that part of him saying goodbye to this character is like acknowledging his mortality, is like acknowledging like, oh, my career's almost over.
Sure.
And I wonder if that's part of why there's a draw for like a star like him to continue doing a franchise like this. Like, because if I say no, that means that I've decided I'm too old or uninterested in doing this thing again.
I'll miss my chance.
Right.
And I think that is part of it. And what's interesting, and we can come back to this as a good segue for our next thing, but it's a little bit like Sylvester Stallone as Rocky.
Yeah.
This actor is so synonymous with this character. Everyone wants to say like, oh, he's just claiming a paycheck.
Sure.
And I'm like, I don't think that's it.
No.
I think these actors genuinely, Harrison Ford, Sylvester Stallone, really love playing these characters.
Yeah.
And they just so happen to be the one they're most known for, maybe, but they don't, I don't think they take it lightly. Like, I think every time they step into this person's shoes, they do it with honesty and integrity. I don't think it is a let's just cash a paycheck and get out of here. I think it's genuinely, I have something I want to do, or I want to say, or, you know, like I'm not ready to close this chapter of my life where I'm a leading action hero. And more power to them. If it were me and I had let's just all put ourselves in these shoes. If we had if we were actors and we had a role that was ours, I was the only one that's ever played this role. It's synonymous with me. If you Google the character's name, I come up. If you Google my name, that character comes up.
Yeah.
If that's the case and somebody bangs on my door and says, we want to make another one, we want you to have this opportunity again, it's a really hard thing to say no to.
Right.
I think you can say, I want to make sure it's right.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're saying, no, that door's closed. I think they're saying, if you can come up with the right story, I'm there. And regardless of the money, because let's face it, Harrison Ford and Sylvester Stallone don't need the money. It's not like an extra $30 million in their pocket is really doing much
Right.
So it's not enabling much in their lives. So, there's that. But like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like they both have integrity about it, and I don't feel like Harrison is just cashing a check, and I don't feel like he's phoning this in. I feel like the problem is not in his performance; it's in the way that the character is written. And again, it's a much older version of this character.
Yeah.
So your interpretation of how this character would be at this age is bound to be different than other people's. Mine is. This doesn't feel like Indy.
And I wish that Spielberg had been more like, was sort of, Kathleen Kennedy said he was like kind of off and on about directing the movie for this development time. And finally was just like, I want to give the film series over to a director with a fresh perspective. Yeah. It's like, well, if this is going to be the last one, why not just direct it? Like, it's not like they're planning a new trilogy and you're like, you know what? I don't think I'm the guy who should be taking this on. I'm also very old and it's probably a good opportunity for someone else to. So I'm not going to blame Steven Spielberg for saying I don't want to direct a movie because I don't want him directing a film he doesn't want to direct.
Yeah,
but
if he's not passionate about it.
But there is part of me that's just like, you don't want to get in there with Harrison Ford and this character, like this idea that you two like conceived to get like this whole thing exists because of Spielberg, George Lucas, and Harrison Ford, and I suppose Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall, but like the big three. And it would have been nice to round out the series with those people involved as well, and no shade to James Mangold, whose films I really all love. But when one thing that is, and it sounds like it's panning out both in your critique and others I've heard, is that James Mangold makes very serious films.
Yes.
And there's not a lot of, it doesn't sound like there's a lot of that Spielbergian like trademark kind of like charm and humor in this one. And we're talking about the character who doesn't smile. Yeah,
it's true. It feels Logan-ish in that way.
Okay.
But I feel like, to talk about Spielberg for a second. Yeah. If he's not passionate about the story, if he's not passionate about doing it again, regardless of the story, I don't want him to do it. But I think that's where, as a producer, you say, well, then we just don't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I want. That's the thing. And that's where all the commerce enters in. Like, well, our star wants to do it. People will come see it, although that's not exactly panning out. But like, it's a brand we can market and everyone knows what it is. And we can do some fun revisionist subversive stuff with it. Probably let's get Phoebe Waller-Bridge, who was involved in the subversion of the Bond franchise, and so let's just do that. Let's do the thing. And you wish that someone had just stepped in and said, guys, I know this is a chance to make a lot of money, but this probably is not a good idea.
Yeah. And it's true. Like if I'm looking at it as a producer or an exec and saying like, okay, Harrison wants to do it, Lucas doesn't, Spielberg doesn't, what do you do? My thought is, well, then maybe we try something really different. Maybe we do like an Indiana Jones saga story and it's a different protagonist that Indy shows up in, and then we can make it our own thing and we can still market it as Indiana Jones saga or whatever. Or we do it animated, or we do something to like give it something where it's like, we're not going to have to be compared to Steven Spielberg.
And you just keep the scale small. Yeah. Like part of what's charming about Logan is like compared to the other X-Men films, it's really stripped down and basic. And like, you may argue like, I wish there had been more fighting and stuff. It's like, but it's just a different, Logan's old and vulnerable and he can't just fly around and he doesn't have unlimited stamina and rippling muscles anymore. Like he's just a man now. And it would have been perfectly fine to say, listen, Indiana Jones is retiring from teaching. He's in his twilight years. There's an adventure that comes up, but it's small scale. Like someone's got a score to settle and he's got to nip something in the bud. It's almost like an epilogue more than it is like another big grand adventure.
I agree. And I think I've made this pitch before, maybe not on the show, but I think I've told you about it. Mm-hmm. My pitch after Crystal Skull was simply Indiana Jones after Skull has two sons. He has Mutt and he has Short Round. Now, we haven't seen Short Round since Short Round was a child. But what this does is it sets up something where Mutt is his newfound son, who's kind of street smart and whatever, and kind of a punk, and then you position Short Round to be the older brother, who is studious and a professor himself, an archaeologist in his own right, following after Dr. Jones's example, and totally. Exactly like miniature Dr. Jones. And you position those two brothers as vying for Indiana's attention, vying for his affection. And it feels a little childish maybe, but that's the point, because by the end you have them come to terms with the fact that they're both his sons and they both represent valid parts of Indy's own personality.
Right.
They both have some of him in them. And for Indy gets to largely sit out or be a mentor to these two boys, these two men. And these two men then can carry the franchise on. So if you wanted to continue it, you've expanded the world by bringing those two brothers into the forefront of the franchise, so that, moving forward, you get, the adventures of Mutt and Short Round, and, whatever. It's still an Indiana Jones movie, but Indy's not necessarily in them anymore, right? Or just makes a cameo appearance or what have you, but let them carry it on. Well, that to me, it tells more of a story that has a beginning, a middle, and end, and blah, blah, blah. But that's my pitch. What they couldn't have accounted for is the sudden reemergence and world conquering of Ke Huy Quan.
Right.
But I don't know. I missed it in this. It would have been cool, to have the world expand in that way. There was really no reason to bring in Phoebe Waller-Bridge, because you had two very valid characters who could have done the same thing. It could have been Short Round that brings the Dial of Destiny to Indy and says, Dr. Jones, I want to go on this one last adventure with you.
Yeah. Come
on, let's do it. And then Mutt just tags along, and it's butting heads the entire time.
I'm so mad this didn't happen.
And of course they could have accounted for, I said.
But it's one of those things where Robert Downey Jr. blows up an Iron Man, and also before Iron Man comes out, he also shoots Tropic Thunder and Zodiac, and those films just happen to do well as well, because he's up on the rise, and it's just oh wow, that's just a lucky byproduct of them coming out after Iron Man. Is people are whoa,
exactly.
Well, Zodiac didn't come out after Iron Man, but anyway,
but yeah.
Did you know this is the 13th most expensive film ever made?
Is it really?
Yeah,
there is no reason for an Indiana Jones film to be anywhere near the top of that list.
I'm looking at the list, and there's 50 of them. They're all franchise films. There's nothing that's except for John Carter's on there, but
sure,
they're all IPs.
Potential franchise. Yeah.
Right. Do you know what the most expensive one is?
The most expensive movie ever made?
Yes.
Is it a James Cameron film?
No.
No? Is it an MCU film?
So, no, it's not. So, James Cameron, so Avatar Way of Water is number 7 on here.
Wow.
$350 million.
Okay.
So you said a Marvel film. So the most expensive Marvel film ever made apparently is Avengers Age of Ultron.
Whoa.
365.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I wonder if there may be some weird accounting there between the two, Infinity War, Endgame, since they were shot together. But
they have Infinity War is on here at 325 at number 9. Endgame's on there right below Ultron at number 6 for 356, and then the pair of them are the number 1 most expensive back-to-back film production. The two movies together cost $1 billion to make.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. By the way, the back-to-back film productions, number 1, Infinity War and Endgame. Number 2 is the Hobbit trilogy. Number 3 is Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, and World's End. Number 4 is Hunger Games, Mockingjay 1 and 2. Number 5 is the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Number 6 is the Harry Potter Deathly Hallows 1 and 2. Number 7 is the Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions. And number 8 is Twilight Breaking Dawn.
You're
Part 1,
telling
Part
me
2.
they spent more on Mockingjay 1 and 2 than they did the 3 Lord of the Rings films?
Yes, Mockingjay 1 and 2 was $300 million to make both those films. And then Lord of the Rings was $260.
I'm assuming this isn't adjusted for inflation then.
The productions listed here have their normal budgets adjusted for inflation using the United States Consumer Price Index, taking the year of release. Charts adjusted for inflation are usually ordered differently because they're dependent on the inflation measure used in the original budget estimate. All right, so what do you think the most expensive single film is?
The most expensive single film.
We'll do this and then we'll hit spoilers for Indy.
Baby's Day Out. That baby had a lifestyle, man. I
had to pay for all of Joe Mantegna's coke.
I don't know, man. Is it okay? I'm going to rattle off a couple directors here.
Okay.
Is it a Scorsese flick?
No.
Is it a Spielberg flick?
No.
Is it a Tarantino flick?
No.
I have no idea.
It's a J.J. Abrams film. It is The Force Awakens.
Are you kidding me? That's the most expensive movie?
That's the most expensive film ever made.
Well, why does it suck so bad?
$447 million.
Wow. So what we've learned here is that money does not equate to quality.
It does not, although that film made $2 billion, so it certainly made all that money back.
So what the execs are seeing is putting more money in equals more money coming out, which is why they spend money on an Indiana Jones film, hoping that they break the bank coming back in.
It has big international appeal. Number 2 on here is Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Again, budget doesn't, equal quality.
Was that the second one?
That's the second one.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, Dominion's the third one.
Wow.
Yeah.
And Dominion had to pay Goldblum and Sam Neill.
Dominion is down here at 15.
Wow.
But it's at 265. Fallen Kingdom was 432.
That is crazy talk.
So much money.
Here's an idea. You know what? Money's clearly no object.
Yeah.
Give another 10 million and another 3 months of work of leeway to your screenwriter.
Yeah.
You might get something really good.
I know. Just pay your screenwriter for a little bit longer and you might get a tighter script and much more.
You know what? Don't even do 10 million. I bet any screenwriter in the world would take a $1 million deal.
Yeah.
Just offer them an extra $1 million.
An extra $1 million.
Just say, here's 3 months and $1 million.
Yep.
I bet you'll end
do
up with a better movie.
everything you possibly can to make this awesome.
You will end up with a better movie.
Yes, sir.
Guaranteed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
That's half the problem with all these is they just don't give enough time for the writing. Yeah. They have an idea, they have an IP, they have stars and directors in mind, they get a release date and they're like, oh shit, we got someone I forgot to fucking write this stupid fucking movie.
Quick, you've got Joe Schmo.
Shit.
You've got 4
Let's
weeks.
hire one of those
What are they called?
writers, sir. Writers.
Hire a writer.
Yeah.
I don't care.
I don't care who.
What was our last hit? Fallen Kingdom.
Yeah.
Send that guy the script. Just tell him to write a new one.
Who wrote Derek Connolly? Okay, let's get Derek Connolly a call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez,
well, and so like as soon as they greenlit, as soon as they decided that Spielberg wasn't directing Dial of Destiny, David Koepp was like, I'm kind of out too. Like he'd already done work on the script, but he was like, I want to give James Mangold the opportunity to get his own people to write this. If we're truly going fresh, then it needs to be fresh all the way, which is commendable for him to be like, yeah, I'm going to share screen credit with this. Like, I won't take sole writing credit. Like that's okay. That's a class move.
Sure.
But that's anyway, money.
Yeah. Interesting.
All right.
Well, yeah. So that's Indiana Jones with the Dial of Destiny.
All right. I'm going to go tell my kids 15 minutes on their tablets, and then we'll do spoilers for this because I want to talk about some stuff.
Okay, let's do it.
right, so if you're still listening, we're gonna do. I'll tell you what's coming up on the rest of the podcast. We're gonna do spoilers for Indiana Jones 5 here, and then I'm gonna talk about the Creed trilogy in some story detail, which we've already done on the show. So if you want to hear the review of Creed 3, we did it a few dozen episodes ago.
Yep.
We didn't talk story details. If you've never seen Creed 3, go listen to that. The movie's on Amazon Prime. Everything we're talking about from this moment on is going to spoil a movie, because I just had another idea to talk about after Creed. But
okay.
Anyways, it fits with this theme.
Okay.
So, all right. So I'll open the spoiler section by saying this. I wonder, part of what factors into my enjoyment of a long running franchise is, can I watch the first one knowing that eventually the events of the final one have happened? So then in the example here, can I watch Raiders of the Lost Ark and sit there and be like, you know what's crazy? Like, you're sitting there watching it like my wife or something. Like, oh, that was nuts, Hey, you know what's even crazier is decades from now, that character is going to time travel.
Yeah, right.
If you go, what? Then it's like, all right, somewhere along the line, this came off the tracks,
Right, exactly.
You can believe it for like the Avengers, because it's like, well, it's a comic book film. Of course, they're going to time travel at some point.
Sure.
But like,
I think the question
Jones?
Is, yeah, right. So, well, here's the thing. Like, I don't have as big of a problem with time travel or aliens as most people do.
Yeah.
Like, to me, the whole thing is supernatural. Like, there are occurrences in this world that cannot be explained, and some of these archaeological finds lead to that.
Yes.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah. But again, it's in the execution of these things. Am I against the idea of aliens? No. Am I against the way that they portrayed the aliens in Crystal Skull? Yeah, kind of, And am I against the idea of time travel? No. Am I against what happens in this movie? Yeah, kind of. And that's kind of what we come to. I texted you and said, how worried are you about Indiana Jones spoilers? Because I have this thing I want to talk about. And it does lead into Creed 3 a little bit.
Okay.
But here's my question. So have you watched any spoiler talk on Indiana Jones, or am I going to be breaking some news to you?
I've seen some spoiler talk.
Okay.
I know a little bit of what happens, at least.
Got it. So in Indy 5, it's like I said, it's revealed that Indy and Marion are separating. The reason is revealed about halfway through the film, not through anything clever, but just Indy just looking dead at the audience and saying what it was, which is that Mutt, his son, is dead. Right. And that the grief, really captured Marion, and Indy was unable to help her with that grief, and that led to the eventual breakup. And so that's where our character is. And of course, to me, this reads as like an overcorrection of the hate against Crystal Skull. Like, it feels like somebody told them like, oh, people don't like Crystal Skull. And they were like, quick, get rid of Marion. Quick, get rid of Mutt. Right. How do we do this? It doesn't matter. They just need to be gone.
Right.
And that's kind of where this goes. So as a screenwriter, you sit down and you say, well, how do I justify the idea that like Indy's son doesn't come help? He's dead.
Yeah.
That's the only logical explanation here.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what happens. And that's one of the things that I talked about, like, kind of leaves a sour taste in my mouth. Like, to me, I don't hate Crystal Skull. Like, I know that's going to fly in the face of everybody else who ever talks about that movie, but like, I don't hate that movie. In fact, I think a lot of it is really good. And a lot of it's really not good. Whatever. But like, I don't hate the movie. So to me, the idea of taking that character and killing him, that's a bit of a slap in the face, because I cared about that character. And it happens off screen between movies. So I hate that too. I don't get, and it's not related to anything. He joins the army and goes to Vietnam and dies.
Yeah.
It's unrelated to anything. So it doesn't propel this story forward. It doesn't do anything. And so, yeah, that just rubs me the wrong way. But like and it shrinks the world. And this is one of my problems is by the end of Crystal Skull, you could kind of say like he's married to Mary and he has a son. You can kind of do what I was talking about and have him with Short Round. You can kind of like imagine all of these scenarios that are now going to happen. And now you've shrunken the world to the point where there's nowhere else to go with the story.
Yeah.
It only can be Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
Yeah.
And so knowing that, this leads into my thought, and I want to pose this to you. And this is the first time you're hearing this too. So, anything we say from here on is probably a little bit off the cuff. My question is, are we as a culture, we meaning Hollywood, is Hollywood perpetuating a culture in which we want to decrease the visibility of fathers, of fatherhood, and of husbands? And when you think about our big heroes, the ones in film that we grew up watching and loved, you have characters like Spider-Man, and Peter Parker is never allowed to be anything more than maybe a college student. Right. Or Superman, who's just sort of perpetually dating Lois Lane forever. And James Gunn's about to take him back to those days again. Yeah. And yet he's been married in the comics for decades. He has a child in the comics. We just never get that on the big screen. Except for Superman Returns, which leads me to another point with Superman. He's a deadbeat dad in Superman Returns. Yeah. He does not know that he has a son, and does nothing to be a father to this boy. Not a good look. Batman has had not just decades, since the 40s, Batman has had a ward, has had a son. Yeah. And we've only seen him on the big screen once. One interpretation. Chris O'Donnell. That's it. Yeah. So we're stuck in this world of we cannot allow these characters to be fathers. We can't allow them to take the next step into maturity. You think about Luke Skywalker. He's a hermit. Han Solo. He's divorced and a deadbeat dad. Yep. He's just a smuggler forever. You think about Indiana Jones. He's divorced. His son's dead. It's just Indiana Jones. These characters are never allowed to be mature. They're never allowed to take that next step of adulthood. Yeah. And here's sort of where we can segue to Creed. Rocky, he's a father. He's a good father. Yeah. And then suddenly when we reboot and it's a soft reboot, Rocky Balboa, we bring back this legacy sequel. Yep. He's estranged. Yeah. He has issues with his son. And then Creed 2, he's estranged. He has no interaction with his son. And it's not until the end of Creed 2 that we get the glimmer of hope that maybe there's some reconciliation there. Right. But all of these characters, Rocky, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Indiana Jones, Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, none of them are allowed to be fathers. None of them are allowed to be husbands. And then you have the characters like James Bond. Mm-hmm. Now, part of that character is that he just is what he is. But it's a little bit funny that in No Time to Die, he finds out he's a father and then promptly dies. Or that Tony Stark, we find out he's a father and he promptly dies. Yes. We are so Logan. He finds out he's a father, promptly dies. This is what happens. And then you think about like the MCU. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, in the MCU, in the entirety of it, I don't remember if Tony and Pepper are married in Endgame.
They are.
But okay,
he's got a wedding ring on.
Okay, so it's the two of them and Clint Barton are like the only people that are married in all of these years of MCU movies, and Clint's the only father that is still fathering, right? Except I guess Thor now at the end of Love and Thunder has an adopted daughter. Yeah,
Scott Lang's got a daughter.
Yeah, okay, but she's an idiot, so I don't care about her. Stupid Gen Z looking
Gen Z STEM people. Their skinny jeans and their
no cap
milkshake. Yeah, they're no cap.
Why does this generation they don't have caps? I don't understand.
No respect and no caps.
So this is what I'm proposing to you.
Yeah.
You look at like Jurassic World Dominion, right? This is a terrible movie, but like Sam Neill, no kids, right? Even though the whole point of the first movie was that he like grows up and accepts children,
right?
And then it's just like, I'm just an archaeologist or just a paleontologist, and I have no kids. I've never gotten married because I'm stuck on Laura Dern, and like none of these people that we grew up watching are allowed to take the next step into adulthood. Why?
I think it is a desire to keep things as familiar and simple as possible for the returning audience. I think that in the case of Dominion, it's like we got to put Jeff Goldblum and Laura Dern and Sam Neill in this film. What should we have them do? Like, hey, what if like, they each have like families? Yeah. And then someone goes, no, you idiot. Because then we have to cast and pay those people. Most of them will be children or teenagers. And we don't want to do that. And it takes up too much story time. And there's story time that won't include boobs or explosions or CGI. Unless they're like, they're having like spousal time.
Of the three you just mentioned, Sam Neill, Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum, two of those characters have children, and we don't have kids, and we don't get to see that. Like in The Lost World, obviously his daughter plays a huge part in that. Jeff Goldblum, Ian Malcolm's daughter, and then in Jurassic Park 3, we see as Alan Grant visits Ellie Sattler's house, she's got kids too, or a kid, and so like they've got children. But we don't ever get to see them parent.
Oh boy, I don't know. I'll stick with that simple answer. Is I think that people making movies. Sorry, not people making movies. I think that people making decisions about money and overall story are saying it's too complex and too much stuff happening that isn't advancing the plot or something. I think it's a big, and it's so we talk about the people who become fathers and promptly die. Like those are some of the best arcs that I've loved in recent movies. I love Endgame, and No Time to Die is my favorite Daniel Craig Bond movie. Logan is one of my favorite comic book films, period. Endgame's one, and it's because those characters all are fulfilling an arc and are allowed to become more mature and adult. There's probably not a big campaign to like erase fatherhood from the popular consciousness. But I think especially, which is weird because especially given that movies are really made for families to come see them mostly now, it's like, well, wouldn't we want to appeal to fathers and mothers? Right. And I just wonder if it's like a cultural thing. Like, well, if we're going to talk about parenthood, it's going to be motherhood. And because women haven't been given enough visibility in film. And so we're going to like make up for lost time. And so, hey, like those aren't stories that like need to be told anymore. We're going to tell young people stories. We're going to tell all these other weird, like, niche stories or whatever, or not at all. But whatever we do, let's not give any time to mature men who are going to serve as role models, because I don't know. And I want, and the thing is like, that's one of the perfect avenues. If you want to get people like engaged in like, let's tell more Black stories. Let's tell more Asian stories. Let's show these kinds of people in a capacity that everyone can relate to. We can't all relate to being an archaeologist, finding a time traveling dial rock thing. And we can't, is it a rock? No, I imagine it's a rock,
but it's fine.
I pictured when you said dial, I pictured like a kitchen timer that Archimedes made.
Yeah. No, it's like a big metallic ring that like fits together with another piece, and it actually has time dials and whatever. Fatherhood,
people can relate to that, and it's the perfect opportunity to change things up with casting, who the people you're going to put in those roles, the color of their skin or their nationality of origin, but the universal language of parenthood. And and so to your point, I don't know why we don't see more of that, because it's the perfect avenue to appeal to the demographic who's coming to your films. And it's the perfect way to bring people into a film that they otherwise may not be interested in because they go, oh, it's a story about fatherhood. And the older people get and the older men get, the more interested they probably become in this subject. I want to see more movies about fatherhood.
I do too. And
I always get her dumb comedies with Eddie Murphy and Kevin Hart and stuff like it's like, boop, boop, men are so stupid. Doop, 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 doop.
Right. How do I do this without my wife?
I don't know. And then at the end, they figure it out.
Yeah, right.
With the help of her.
Fatherhood was inside you all along.
Right. You just had to get the help of a bunch of women.
Yeah, right. Or, other man children. And, so I talked about this with my wife and I was like, what do you think? And she was like, well, first of all, I think you're me. I'm a little more fixated on that because of my point in life right now, right? Yeah. Like I'm a husband and a father. So would I like to see Superman like dating and keeping a secret from Lois Lane? Sure. That's always fine. That's romantic, whatever, fine. But like, I really am dying to see him be a dad.
And for non-parents, we've seen him do all those things.
Yes.
And so why not show an angle that's in the comics and is a maturing element?
So this is one of my theories is that I believe it's a little bit of laziness. So by its nature, if I can write a Superman story where he has to keep his secret identity, this has been done a million times. I could do that in my sleep. I'm writing a new script and I can just use those other templates and call it a day. And I can have like Lois be in the story because, well, they're dating and he has to keep a secret from her. And this is causing conflict. But the second that she knows his secret because they're married and they have a child, that they're co-parenting, now I have to come up with a different reason for her to be in the story.
Yeah. And I don't want to.
And she may not be in conflict with her husband.
Right.
This is the other problem. The other way, there's conflict. There's no conflict this way. They're in agreement. They, theoretically, they get to say like, we believe we should parent this way. And, they get to be a unified front. Or you make up conflict, but then you really start stretching it. So like I think it's more work to do it this way. And you also have to sit there and think, so let's say they told a story. There was a comic a few years back where it was Peter Parker grown up and he has a daughter with Mary Jane, and it sold really well and like it was generally well received. What I loved about it was the idea that with great power comes great responsibility means something different when your responsibility first is to your daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So now, like when you're 20. Or when you're 18 or when you're 16, with great power comes great responsibility means I've got this great power. I need to help my fellow man.
Yeah.
When you're 30 and you have a daughter,
right,
it's I have to protect her.
Yeah.
And then I can help my fellow man. But I got to take care of her first. And so it creates this new wrinkle on the superhero dynamic where maybe the general public doesn't come first anymore. Maybe the citizens of Metropolis aren't as important as my son to me. And that is a very interesting thing for a writer to have to sift through.
Yeah.
And I think it takes more work. And I think it's just way more easy. It's just way more like it spills out of you if it's just citizens of Metropolis are in trouble. I have to help somebody. Oh, but Lois is looking. I can't change yet. Yeah. Lois, look over there. And she's like, what is it, Clark? And then he rips open his shirt and flies away. It's been done a million times, but I can write it in my sleep. But if instead, like we're in the middle of like punishing our son for sneaking out. Oh, well now Lois, I really have to go. Like there's a earthquake and well, okay, fine, go. Like I'll take care of John, like you go. And like, it's like a whole new dynamic, right? Or there's an earthquake, but like my son is late and like, I need to find my son. What do I do first? Help the people or help my son? And like you have to take a stance as a writer on that. Right? Like you have to have a point of view. What's more important? The 100, 10,000, 100,000 people who are at risk from this natural disaster or my son?
Yeah.
The writer has to take a stance on that.
That's interesting.
And that's tough.
Yeah, but like you look at it like it's their job. Like the arc of like you said becomes I have this thing I'm good at. I feel a responsibility to use it for the greatest good. And now I have something going on at home, and I have to bring all of my skills and passion and attention to my home first. And my career may suffer a little bit from that. And I can identify with that, and many parents can identify with that. And, especially like there's the Justice League, like, especially if you're a part of a team and, or a group of friends or something, and then like one or two, you starts having kids, the dynamic changes, your ability to contribute to the group or the workplace may be diminished in as much as you're just not available whenever to work on the thing because you've got other stuff going on. And it would be an amazing way to walk through that phase of life with an audience, I think.
For sure. And I would argue that allowing a character to grow up in that way, to like mature towards that level of adulthood, is the only way to truly have a meaningful arc for some of these characters. Yeah. So if you look at like, what is the ending of Batman? You can look at like, Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns, in which he's just more Batman. Or you can look at I'm bigger, better, brawlier Batman. Or you can look at like The Dark Knight Rises, where the idea is, well, I guess Gotham doesn't need me anymore. I'll go have some coffee with Selena Kyle somewhere. Okay, fine, right. Whatever. But like, it's in good hands now. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's there. Right. And that feels a little weird. It's not as meaningful an arc, right? But like, if you have Batman instead say, look, what I used to do was I was defined by my tragedy. This tragedy that happened to me, I took out vengeance on everyone that I came in contact with. What I realized was I wasn't actually seeking to like take out my frustration. I was looking for a family this whole time. And now looking back on like at the Thanksgiving table in Wayne Manor, I've got Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon and Jason Todd and Tim Drake and Damian Wayne and Selena Kyle and Alfred and Superman and Lois are here with John. And like, there's a whole table full of people. Yeah. Then Batman starts to realize like, I don't do what I do anymore because I'm mad about my parents or because I'm sad about my parents. I do it because it's right. I do it to protect these people. And I do it because these people would do it regardless. And I'm going to train them how to do it right. Yeah. And I'm the general here and they are my privates and they're going to go out and wage this war with me. But like, it allows for an actual arc, and like Batman then gets to rest. And it's not a matter of resting in that I'm never going to be Batman again. It's resting in that I'm content. Yeah. I'm no longer breaking down in the shower about my parents at the age of 47. Yeah. You know what I mean? Instead, I have this family that I've built. I lost my family and then I built a new one. Yeah. And my dad wasn't here for me, but I will be here for these people. And that's what that character eventually matures into. It has to be. That's the logical conclusion to a man who loses his family. Yeah. Is he builds a family. That's the only logical explanation. And so to me, like the same goes for Indiana Jones, the same goes for, Luke Skywalker, who's rebuilding a Jedi Order. I don't understand the why he's not allowed to have children and why he's not allowed to like foster the Force in them. Yeah. And whatever, like it just feels weird to me that it's like we're going out of our way, like you said, to either keep the status quo because that's what's easiest or because of what I said. And it's just laziness in the writing. I don't have to think as much because I can just use the blueprint of what came before or whatever it may be. And again, and I'll also say as devil's advocate, it's not to say that it's a bad thing necessarily that Luke ended up being a hermit. It's all an execution. It's always an execution. Yeah. But it does start to become weird that like this seems to be a recurring thing. And at this point, if they were like, we're doing Back to the Future Part 4. And I'm like, well, I assume Marty has no kids, or
Right.
hey, we're doing freaking, I don't know. I'm looking over my shelf. The Thing 2, which I think they are doing. Well, I assume McCready has no kids and is just living basically in an Antarctic shelter again. Okay, whatever. I mean, I don't know. They kind of did it with Top Gun, right? Like Maverick's still just Maverick at the end of the day.
But at least he reconciles with a surrogate son and does not promptly die.
Right. And he matures. Right, exactly. He doesn't promptly die.
He almost promptly dies.
Almost. I don't know. There's always Top Gun 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, I don't know. It's weird. It's like we just have this weird aversion to it. But I'm with you. I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. Like there are a lot of people out there who would be like, it's the woke. They don't want they don't want fatherhood to be a thing. Like they want to erase toxic masculinity and whatever. And I'm just like, I don't think that's what it is. I think it's just laziness and people wanting money.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up because after Indiana Jones, it started to occur to me because what happened was, first scene, divorced from Marion, and my immediate thought was, Lucasfilm only has one story they can tell with this man.
Yeah.
They did the same thing with Han Solo.
Yes.
And so then like throughout the film, I start thinking like, this is just Han Solo again.
Right.
And then my son's dead. And I'm like, well, it's either your son or you.
Or you, right.
Like, again, reconcile with son, promptly die.
Yep.
That's the only thing. A Quiet Place. I have a new son.
Right.
Promptly die. It's like that's the only thing we can do that's a far-fetched example. It's just,
sure.
I'm being facetious, but you know what I mean. The point stands, right? Like, let fatherhood be a thing. Let these characters mature. And again, filmmaking is different than comic books. I get it. With a comic book, you kind of have to maintain the status quo for decades and decades and decades and decades and decades. But with a movie, there has to be a definitive end.
Yeah.
So you have to work toward that end.
Again, I'll go back to Logan. It was the perfect way for a character who was always like powered by his invincibility and by his rage to find motivation and strength by being vulnerable and by being driven to protect someone he actually has connected with and cares about and loves.
Yep.
And I hate the promptly dying, but for a lot of, especially in those kind of movies, like you still get the angle of like, the symbolism of sacrifice. It just sucks that men get to have one sacrifice and that's dying. And then we don't get to have like connection and bonding and parenting and all that stuff,
or just daily sacrifice.
Right.
Like that's a thing too.
Let's transition a little bit into talking about Creed.
Because Creed does not do this. Creed allows Adonis to have a daughter.
Yes.
And care for her.
Father her. And her and he and Bianca, bring her through weather like life's difficulties as a family. There's dynamics within their marriage and that affects both of their professions. We show by Creed 3 that Bianca has had to take a step back from music because her own hearing loss has progressed. But she is still able to work in it and produce and be around it. But she very clearly states to Adonis how hard that has been for her.
Yeah.
But she's still done it but it takes work. And I thought that was a really strong example of, what you're talking about, like of the parenting angle and just being a human being, like the acceptance of there's just limitations and I could keep working in music and lose my hearing faster, or I could preserve it for as long as I can because I've got people that I want to be here for fully, know? And of course, their daughter's deaf. And that takes work. And I watched Creed. I watched all 3 of the films over the weekend. Actually, I'd seen Creed before. I'd never seen 2 or 3. I understand why it works that Adrian's not there because, her being there possibly complicates Rocky's investment in Adonis. Robert being there possibly complicates Rocky's, his willingness to just jump in and help him,
Yeah.
I feel like there's ways to ride around that because Robert and Adrian would both tell him, you should help Adonis.
Yeah, right.
Our relationship, first of all, our being in your life period and our good relationship doesn't hinder you from helping Adonis.
Yep.
I really, other than that hang up, I think that Stallone is putting Rocky to great use in the first two films.
Yes.
I think this is exactly what Rocky would be doing. He wouldn't be, living the high life, or even in boxing, he'd be doing something very simple and maintaining a stillness in his life.
Yeah.
So I think that everything they do with his character in these movies is appropriate. I do appreciate that they have that angle and that emphasis on fatherhood through Adonis.
Yes.
It is important. It does mature him. Because in the first film, he is just this very reactive, he's got a chip on his shoulder. He wants to prove himself. He wants to do it on his own. And by the end of the film, he realizes that, he can and should take ownership of his identity and, not because he owes it to his father or to anyone else, but because that identity gives him power and gives him purpose and gives him strength. And in the second film, like his everything he's going through with his family, his family gives him strength. And in the third one, which I thought was the strongest, by the way, the strongest story of all the three, because the person he's fighting is someone he knows from his past, someone that he feels he has wronged, and someone he feels
representative of an inner demon.
Yeah, exactly. Someone he feels indebted to, which is why everything happens in the first place. He lets Damien train and be associated with him because he feels that Damien's incarceration is his fault.
Yeah.
And that so he feels incredibly guilty being as successful and happy as he is, seeing how much Damien doesn't have. Yeah. And I think that him acknowledging, it helps when Damien turns out to be an asshole. But him ultimately deciding and taking ownership of, well, where we and telling Damien, like, you know what, like, it wasn't our fault. We were abused by our foster father, basically. We were hurt. We were victimized, and we both dealt with it in the only way we know how, because we were just kids.
Yeah.
And for him to be able to take the step and heal for himself and for his kid, like, the idea that trauma, he's passing it along to his family because he's not dealing with life's obstacles well.
Yeah.
He deals with it well if he has to fight someone because he's good at fighting, but he's not good at talking. He's not good at opening up and emoting, at being vulnerable with someone who he should love and trust.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a very mature story for a fighter to deal with.
Yeah. I agree.
I think just overall, by the way, just critiquing the three films, I think that I think my favorite is still the first.
Yeah.
I really thought 2 was very strong.
Yeah.
But the first one's just knocks you out of the park. The second one, the story is very emotional on both sides of the ring. I think I was very impressed with the Drago storyline, because I thought, like, all right, he's just gonna be a couple of mean guys. But when they keep bringing up the angle of, like, how after Ivan lost the fight to Rocky, like, Russia basically rejected him. His wife left him.
Life crumbled.
Yeah, everything ended for him, basically. And it's like, God, that sucks. Yep. And I really loved Ivan's arc of doing the right thing for his son and calling the fight.
Yep.
And preventing him from being hurt the way that he hurt Apollo.
Yeah.
And the way that, and the way that he was hurt. And and that Donnie learns that having something to fight for more important than fighting itself. And then Creed 3, I just think, like I said, they kept the fight very personal for him. I will say the boxing itself in the third one is, I'm not as enthralled by it. I never felt like Adonis was in really any peril in any of the fights. The training montages, boxing scenes were all just done better in the other two films. And I just think, not poorly here, it's just a different style of filmmaking. I'm just more partial to Ryan Coogler and Stephen Caple Jr.'s approaches to that. It's, and it's Michael B. Jordan's first film. And he does a fine job with those elements. I think the script is strong. I think the filmmaking is fine. I wanted more from the boxing scenes, and to an extent, the boxing scene, the final fight in Creed 3 isn't itself really the emphasis. Like, there's clearly a lot of internal stuff that's going on during the fight. And there's a certain shot where, like, I think it's after the first or second round where, like, there's this look on Damien's face where he looks worried or like upset that like this isn't going his way. And from then on, the fight is clearly like Adonis trying to figure out, how can I gracefully
take him down? Like, there's no longer any tension of, can Adonis win the fight? It's how will I save this relationship? Which is fine and in tune with the story. It's just, Yeah, no, I would agree. I think that the fights in the third one are stylistically new, but I agree with you. I don't think there's as much peril to them, or I don't think that, like, with, the Drago fight and whatever else. I mean, even if you go back to the Rocky movies, you always feel like at any point Rocky might end up dead.
Yeah.
Right. Might end up completely just paralyzed or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't get that same sense here. And yeah, that is a problem. But but I will say, like, the style is new. What Michael B. Jordan brings to those fights is the timing is different. The pacing is different than anything we've had before. And so I think in that way it's interesting, but story-wise. And so I would pin it more on the story. And I don't think that the script is weak, but I do think that story-wise, you're right. Like, by the time that moment happens, it's just a matter of, like, running out the clock and getting him, for us, not in the fight.
Right.
For us, it's like running out the clock to when the good guy wins. Like, we know it's going to happen. Let's just get there. And it doesn't feel like as, down to the wire as the other ones have, or whatever. And, story-wise, like for me, the third one, so I guess if I had to rank them, I'd say the third one is the weakest.
Sure.
But again, not bad at all.
The least strong.
Yeah, exactly. Strong, but the least strong.
Yeah.
And it is, I think, for me, like, there's a couple of dropped elements. Like, I feel like the storyline with his daughter, like, keep this our little secret kind of stuff, it just kind of fizzles out. Like, it doesn't really go. Like, you'd expect that to tie in somehow, or, like, end up in the climax. And it doesn't really, but I guess that's okay. But, like, you know what I mean? Like, for me, there's just a few of those little moments. And so I think that kind of drops it down a little bit. But other than that, like, I do think it's thematically strong. And what you want from any Rocky or Creed movie is the story to actually be about something real world. And what's great about this is it's, again, not about the fighting, not about the boxing. It is about Adonis conquering an inner demon, this ghost that's haunting him that he hasn't even told his wife about. Like, this thing that's just, like, gnawing at his soul, and has been for decades. And now, only now is it unbearable. Only now does it bubble up to the surface. And I think that that's an interesting thing, because, again, these movies are always all about something we can relate to. And that's certainly something we can relate to.
I just felt like time moved very fast in the movie. And, like, just things like, okay, now, now we're to the fight. And it's like, oh, okay. We're there. Or, like, you just, boom. Like, Jonathan Majors has this fancy new house already now. And it's like, it's just Just things like that I'll just chalk to the inexperience of the director, the relative inexperience, because it's not, like I said, the script is really good. I just think that it's one, I'm not going to patronize him and be like, well, it's, yeah, you'll get better. It's like, no, he's making choices, and it's just, they're just not to my taste as much as the other directors. But some of it is like, you could have, when you have him after the third round, where it's clear to us that Creed's going to win the fight. He just doesn't, he wants to salvage this relationship. So how can we do that? But the film still tries to tell us that Creed may not win the fight. There's things that happen. He gets knocked down and you're like, but it looked so certain he was going to win. It's just like, so if it's just stuff like that, where it's like, as a director, you just go, okay, what am I trying to communicate to the audience? Is Creed in peril or is he not in peril? Like, we've got the story thread of he wants to salvage the relationship, but how can we still communicate tension and not just the inevitability of Damien losing this fight? How's Damien going to react when he loses the fight? Is he going to go nuts? Do I have to kill this guy? Like, what's going to happen?
Right.
Is it going to be like the last Boy Scout where he just pulls like a little revolver out of his glove? Yeah. And tries to kill him? Like, what do we do?
Yep.
So yeah, so all three films are on Amazon Prime right now. I know that they want to make more. Michael B. Jordan wants to make more movies. They want to do some spinoffs, I think.
I think a Drago spinoff.
And I don't know. I mean, like, especially after that film, it's like, I'm fine if y'all want to keep making these because I'm enjoying them. It's just like, if you're going to do a third movie about how he's a little too old to be boxing already, why are we making more movies? Unless he does not box. But again, why? Why are we making Creed movies if Creed's not going to box in them?
Right.
And so, and again, and if Stallone's not going to be in them, I didn't feel his absence here the way you did. To me, I felt enough that this was just, not that Rocky wouldn't have gotten involved, not that there's not a way for Rocky to have coached him through this, on a personal level.
Sure.
But I didn't feel his absence, really. I just felt it like Adonis lives in Los Angeles. He's got a family. Rocky, he has moved on from having such and he's retired, so he doesn't have as close a relationship with Rocky at this point. Yep. And Rocky is presumably a little bit happier in his own life on the East Coast with Robert.
Yeah. It's not so much that I felt like Rocky was necessary. Yeah. It's that I missed him. Yeah. But I do think that there is a moment, there should be a moment in there where Rocky has a voice, and it can literally be on the phone.
Yeah.
But like one scene I think would be beneficial would be to have Stallone or on FaceTime or whatever. I don't even care. Right. Like it could literally be like, yo, Rock, like, am I doing the right thing here? And Rocky, telling some story and being like, yeah, man, like you do what you're doing. And, you got to show this guy or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, but make it clear to us, it's going into the third act. Should I be doing what I'm doing? And it's Rocky just saying something like, yeah, but the thing about friends is they're hard to come by. So like,
right.
If there's a way you can salvage that friendship,
you can't just
don't give
this
up
guy
on
to
him
the
yet.
curb.
You know what I mean? And like, if there's one thing I learned from your father, it's that, an enemy can become a friend, and like these kind of things, like that's what we needed. And it's just the one scene.
Yeah.
And so again, it's not a like he needs to be here throughout, but there needs to be one moment, because if there's anybody that Creed would have gone to, even just for a like, look, I need a pep talk or I need whatever, I need to bounce an idea off of, it's Rocky. And you also get the moment where Rocky can say, hey, by the way, I'm real sorry about your mom. Sorry I couldn't make it out to the funeral. And then that complaint from everybody goes away. Why did he come to the funeral? Which I'm like,
sure.
That complaint goes away.
He didn't really know her, like.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. It would have been nice, but
Sure.
not necessary, especially an entire country away.
But again, like if you're not training Creed, I don't expect you to fly out to California like in the last movie. Like, you know, it's like
and be in the fight.
Yeah, like guy has a restaurant to run, you guys. Like you can't just leave town for days on end. You know what the margins are in the restaurant business, like
right?
In
exactly.
Philadelphia, for God's sake.
Exactly.
Give the man a break. He's got a fucking business to run, okay? And he's presumably the only person who works there.
Yes,
he cooks all the food. He waits on everyone.
Does everything.
Cleans up.
Yeah. Yep.
Leave him alone.
That's right.
He makes $30,000 a year.
Yep.
No, that would have been perfect. And as you said in your review, and I agree, I think the film could have been longer. It could have. The other films are like 20 minutes longer than this movie.
Yep.
And the reason is there's more story and there's more stuff like that. It just sweetens the deal once we get to the fight.
The passage of time would have been a lot easier to sort of stomach.
Yeah.
If there was more time in the script.
Because it feels like there's just some cut out of the late second act here. And we're already at the fight. Wow. Okay. That's, I feel like we have still stuff to do.
We shouldn't be here yet. Yeah.
And there's a ton of stuff that I remember seeing in the trailer that I did not see in the film. And I wonder if there was more and they just talked him down and MGM or whoever was like shorter.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, or agreed or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I also just feel like Jonathan Majors was really good in the movie, but I do feel like there must have been, they don't get enough scenes where they talk.
Yeah.
Once he turns on him.
Yep.
And I feel like there should have been.
He kind of disappears from the movie after his betrayal until the end. Yeah.
Right. He just sort of, and it's like, it's just kind of weird. And I don't know. So it's fine. It's just, so if we want to make more of these, I don't know. I'd like to see more of Adonis' story with Bianca. I mean, I think that's a really strong angle. And I just don't know. I don't know what we're going to do it about. And Adonis is too old to fight. And it's the fourth film. And I don't know. Do we have to? We don't have to.
I have a hard time with this after this movie because of a few reasons. Like you said, they continually talk about how old he is. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, so we're going to start really stretching the believability of this. If you keep saying he's too old. I think there becomes a problem with like him becoming a mentor the way that Rocky was, because we've seen that. So it's like, okay, well then at what point does this ever end? If they all just become supporting characters in their own franchises. It just needs to,
what do these movies make? Creed made $173 million on a $40 million budget. Creed 2 made $214 million on a $50 million budget. Creed 3 made $275 million on a $75 million budget. So they're making increasingly more money, but they are getting more expensive to make.
Yep.
But they are making a lot of money and they're all staying below the 100 million mark. So that's the money angle says they'll make more, or they'll at least want to make more. I don't know how many more times Bianca would let him fight and without compromising her character. Yep. And I don't know why he would feel the need to.
Yeah.
He has healed. He's healed himself of that. Yeah. He's healed himself of his father's death. He's taken the chip off his shoulder. He's gained his own family. He's found something to fight for. And then finally he let go of the guilt and the anger that drove him to fighting in the first place. Yeah. He wasn't a fighter because his dad was. Yep. That's not why he kept fighting. That may have been where he figured I'll start.
Yeah.
But he kept fighting because he had anger and guilt and something to prove that he wasn't a coward.
Yeah. The only possible angle I can see, and again, I haven't been paid to think about this, so I haven't thought about it really hard. The only possible angle I can think about is that you continue the storyline of like, this is our little secret and I'm going to teach you some things. Mm-hmm. And the fourth Creed is about like his daughter joining like a junior boxing league and he's training her, but it's not like a mentor-mentee thing. It's like an overbearing father asserting his expectations on his daughter, who may be more at a hobbyist level. than he realizes. And so it's that like I'm living vicariously through my daughter storyline. And I think that's relatable. You know, you could totally do something like that. But what the third act final battle is, if it's just two kids punching each other in the face.
yeah.
Kind of, I don't know. Unless Donnie's like, all right, I'm going to beat this kid up.
Yeah.
My daughter doesn't want to do it. I'm going to do it. Why? And it's just him punching kids at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Unless you do it's Donnie's daughter versus Rocky's grandson, and they fight. And
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay.
I think
it's worth a shot.
I think they just need to stop. I think I would like for them to stop. They're not going to. Yeah. And if they make another one, I'll watch it. But at this point, I'm like, why? It's just so it ends a little abruptly to me. Yeah. But I don't think there's any open loops left. You know.
Yeah. Or maybe I don't know. Maybe in between Creed 3 and 4, Creed's daughter dies and it leads to the dissolving of their marriage. And then he gets called out by his goddaughter that we've never heard of to go on one last boxing adventure in which he time travels and comes back to the future, a wiser man, but also still alone because his daughter's dead.
She died in Vietnam.
She joined Vietnam. She joined the war in Vietnam.
No. She died in Vietnam. She just went there she got
vacation.
sick. Yeah.
It was a vacation.
She got like malaria.
No, it's totally mundane. She just tripped and broke her neck.
Right.
That's it. It was just like, hey, Dad, look at this step. Oh, done.
Last thing I want to talk to you about, just speaking of this sort of stuff, because this was on my mind today, and we've mentioned James Mangold and Logan. We haven't talked we can keep this short because we don't need to have a lengthy discussion about it, but we haven't really talked about Hugh Jackman's involvement in this third Deadpool movie. And I was thinking about it today because I was reading, so I don't know why, but so I was reading a little bit about him training for it and everything and how many calories he's eating. And he did this interview with Chris Wallace a few months back, and he was talking, Chris Wallace was like, so why, they were talking a little bit about him being Wolverine again. And he was basically saying like, there was no like why really that I heard. I'm sure that some of it's tied up in whatever they're doing with the story. And so he can't say fully. Yep. They did say that him and Ryan Reynolds said that Logan takes place in 2029 and Deadpool takes place before that. I don't know that I like that because I can't watch Logan with the knowledge that this recurs after some silly adventure with Deadpool.
Sure.
And then for watching Deadpool, it's like, well, how can I like this if he's just going to end up where he is in Logan? Because at the beginning of Logan, he's miserable.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so to me, it's like, I could never look at them as things that occurred as two things that happened to the same character.
Yeah.
I much prefer a variant of Logan.
Yeah.
Which maybe that's what they're doing. I don't know. Maybe they were just trying to tell people like to chill out. We didn't resurrect him or anything.
Yeah, sure.
And without giving away the story, I just wouldn't have said anything. I just would have been like, well, just come see this movie and find out. That being said, they're currently shooting this. And so I went on his Instagram and I was looking at him and everything. And I was like, okay, like the look they're going for is more like regular comic book Logan and stuff. He's eating a bunch. He's putting on a ton of muscle, and he's had all this time to do it. Mm-hmm. Logan was 2017, so this movie's coming out next year. So it will have been 7 years since the last time he was Wolverine.
Yeah.
I love Logan. I think Logan's a masterpiece. Mm-hmm. The only thing I didn't get from Logan is a whole lot of bananas action.
Sure.
That I like to see from Wolverine.
Yeah.
Wolverine is not as yoked and muscled up in that movie as the other films. And I enjoy that as well because I just think that that's incredible and impressive. And and nice to look at, of course. And of course, like, you know, as a guy watching another dude like beating up people, like, he looks great.
Yep.
And I want Wolverine to look great.
Yep.
I just don't know. The only reason I'd be seeing Deadpool 3 is for Hugh Jackman, is because I love him as Wolverine. And again, if they're doing variant Wolverine and this movie's terrible, I can't hold it against Logan. If they do, this is the same Wolverine and it's terrible, I don't hold it against Logan, but I just go, why did you do? I feel bad for Hugh Jackman.
Sure.
And I want to know why he wants to come back. And I wonder if it's what we're talking about. Is it just, I've played this character for so long, I love this character, and someone asked me to do it, and again, presumably they gave him a very good idea.
Yeah.
And he said, that sounds worth my time, because I know that it's not easy for him to do all the physical stuff to become Wolverine. It's very hard.
Yeah.
And he's older.
Yep.
So I'm putting a little bit of faith that this is more than just doing a favor for his buddy, Ryan Reynolds. Because he's putting himself through quite a lot to do this. Yeah. So, Dustin, you're my friend, but if you had asked me something similar and I'd already said I was retired, I would be like, no, I'm sorry.
I'm not going to go back.
I'm not going to go back on that. That's like a year and a half of just changing the way I eat in my entire lifestyle.
Everything.
And Dustin, I've been running 3-4 hours a week for like a couple of months. I'm really tired. And I'm not doing nearly as much as Hugh Jackman is, and I'm much younger than he is.
Yep.
So, God love that man. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that in general?
I assumed it was a variant of Wolverine, which leads into a different problem. So I have no horse in this race because I've not seen the first 2 Deadpool movies, and I couldn't care less. But I will say, like, part of what the problem is, like, if you think about the Michael Keaton cameo part in The Flash, this is a variant of Michael Keaton's Batman. It is not the Tim Burton Batman.
Right.
So the problem with that is I don't know this Batman. I have no emotional connection to him. Yeah. So story-wise, if it's a variant of Wolverine, then it's kind of like, well, it kind of could be any actor then, because I don't know this character. And I don't know the adventures he's talking about, and I don't know what he's done before this. I have no idea. But if it is the actual Wolverine from the movies leading up to Logan, then the question is like, I mean, how does this slot in? A, and B, does that then mean that Deadpool takes place in that same world and therefore the MCU, or not? And like, how does that all work? And so that raises that ugly question, which, for which there's not a great way to exposit that to the audience. And then there's also the idea of like, I don't want it to ruin Logan and where I know the character is going, because inherently then this becomes a prequel. And if it's a prequel, then you lose some of the tension of, well, is he going to die here? Well, clearly not, because nope. And again, how do you convince me that this is Logan's Logan without expositing that to the audience and like having Deadpool annoyingly be like, hey guys, this is the same Logan from that movie you saw a few years ago. But that's in the future and that hasn't happened yet. And then I'm like, but that's annoying. So like, I don't know. It just adds a lot of complication into a lot of it that has to be really carefully constructed and thought through. My thought is the easiest thing to do is just say, it's just Hugh Jackman playing Wolverine, but it may not be the exact Wolverine that we know. And then the easiest thing to do there is to say, put him in a costume he's never been in. Right? He's in the blue and yellow or whatever. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, okay.
In this universe, he dresses up like that. Like,
right.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's what I think they should do. I think it should.
Or have him be like, what, your Professor X isn't black, or you're what do you mean? What do you mean your Cyclops isn't an actual Cyclops? You know what I mean? Yeah. And like,
hey, Scott, and just like a golem walks in, like, what? It's one eye.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Deadpool's like, oh, Jesus, what the fuck is that?
I didn't know you meant an actual Cyclops, like from the Odyssey.
Jean Grey is really gray. And she's like a 1,000-year-old zombie. Like, hell. Yeah, I agree. Like, I think that because it's definitely an MCU thing. They said it's the Deadpool. It's gonna be a very fish out of water story for Deadpool. Yeah. It's just a character like that being dropped into the MCU. So I'm going to assume, hopefully, this is an optimistic assumption, that Deadpool is temporarily in the MCU. He is not going to stick around. He's just he's a byproduct of the Fox acquisition, and so therefore we have an opportunity to do something fun with a fourth wall breaking character who is aware of the business reasons why he's there, which I'm sure he'll reference. And we have an opportunity to do something with Hugh Jackman. We have an opportunity for a bunch of other things, and we're already playing with these multiverse ideas. So we have a story device that can bring Deadpool into another universe and into other universes where he encounters Wolverine, who he's aware of, but has never actually met in the films. Wolverine's not in any of the Deadpool films. So, but us as an audience, we know Wolverine, but I think the best course of action is it's this Hugh Jackman. So you know a little bit of what to expect with his portrayal, but there's gonna be plenty that's different. That's going to communicate. It's not the same Wolverine. It's Wolverine. It's Hugh Jackman. But it's different. And so therefore, I think the opportunity that Hugh Jackman saw was the opportunity because he's already given the character an ending. So it's not the whole, I feel like there was a more story to tell thing. I can safely bet that wasn't his reason. I'm going to guess that his reason was it was an opportunity to play Wolverine differently. And if that's the reason, that means the character is a little different. Yeah. Maybe he's nicer. Because we've already done the whole fuck everybody Wolverine, in Logan. Like, we've seen Wolverine at his lowest, and we've seen him.
Bob, you want me to knit you a sweater? You look cold.
Right. Like, or he's just like, hey, I'm making coffee. Does anybody else want coffee? Like, he's just very in touch with his feelings, and he's very helpful and courteous. Yep. Like, fine. Like, do something like that. Like, make it plain to us this isn't the same guy, because we've seen Logan at rock bottom. We've seen him work his way back up and connect. And that all happened in one movie, which was a perfect film called Logan that everyone should see. But in this, like, Deadpool is somewhat of a comedy. So having a character like that in Deadpool doesn't really work. Having a character with an edge opposite Deadpool does work. And I just don't want it to be Colossus, a Russian Colossus, or this Negasonic teenage warhead chick that is nonetheless in this movie. Everyone's like, I'm so glad Negasonic is back. I'm like, God, I hate that character. I hate all these characters. Like, I don't need her in this. Like, I don't know. Anyways, the point is Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds doing the film. That's great. I think the two of them will be great. I think Wolverine will be enough of a foil for Deadpool that dynamic can work. But I don't want it to be the same character. And I want them to take the opportunity to let Hugh Jackman do other stuff that doesn't take him outside of Wolverine's character. I don't know. And I want them to give Deadpool things that make me care what he does. Maybe they can't. I don't know. I don't know. So I don't know. I have worries about this movie. I want to see it. But if Hugh Jackman was in the film, I don't think I'd have any interest at all. I probably won't see it in theaters either way.
That's fair.
But anyway, so I don't know. Fair. I know. I want to see Hugh Jackman come back as Wolverine. So of course, as a fan, I'm interested. So
sure.
I don't know, but I don't think he's as attached to Wolverine as Stallone is to Rocky, or Ford is to Indiana Jones. Rocky is what made Stallone's career. That's what started. So of course he's the most attached, and really the same with Harrison Ford. Like, Indiana Jones was his. No, Solo came first, but
Han Solo.
But I don't think he feels as much close to Han Solo.
He hates Han Solo.
He just tolerates that he's very famous for that role. But for Hugh Jackman, like, Wolverine that's what jump started his career. And so it's must be important, but he has to do way more to do it than Stallone or Ford have to do to jump back into theirs. So I don't know.
Yep.
Anyways. All right. Well, that's all. Ooh,
yep.
This is a long episode.
Cool,
Jesus.
Long episode.
All right, everybody. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. So,
yeah.
Great. All right. Well, what's next for people to listen to? Next thing we're talking about is, Scream Mission. Friday is the last, our last Scream Mission episode.
Oh,
Get ready for Mission Impossible. So, and then after that, Extraction and Mission Impossible.
Yes.
7.
Sweet.
So cool. Great. By the time you're listening to this, I have Netflix and I've watched Extraction too. So
cool.
Exciting. All right, everybody. Well, have a good week. Have a good weekend. And
have a good week.
We'll see you later.
See you later.
If you're making a franchise, please end it though. At some point. Please end it gracefully.
Yep.
Walk
and please
away.
Consider fatherhood as an option for your character.
Right. I'm going to call this episode Please Walk Away.
Yes.
Please just walk away.